Hey guys, it's Sam again. I finished reading Thomas's journal. I can't believe I trusted him. Thomas knew everything. He knew what the town was all along. He knew Irene would come after me, and he didn't tell me anything. I feel like such an idiot. Every single national park has one of these towns. He had been the head of a team of people called the Watchers, a branch of a company called ARC, Anomaly Research Corporation, assigned to monitor Hungry Horse, to make sure that the people who go missing in national parks are found before the town can get them. Jesus Christ, why didn't I figure this out sooner? Why did I trust him? Stupid, stupid Sam. I read some more of his journal. It explains that the towns might be sentient and can choose who can see and interact with them, and how national parks are only founded when one of these towns blink into existence. Yellowstone is the first and has the largest town. But the towns aren't the main threat. It's what the people who get taken turn into. When they get taken, their minds are changed and become something else. Something sinister. I flip to another page and it explains that a town doesn't take everyone. Some people are harder for the town to influence, and they can resist its power. These people are called Watchers. Watchers can still be taken, but it's rare. I think Hungry Horse just took the last Watcher in Yellowstone. There's a phone number and a note written inside the front cover of the journal. It says to call the number if Thomas is missing, or if he seems off, and to tell the person who picks up on the other end that Thomas has been compromised. This is fucking insane, I thought to myself. I set the journal aside and looked out the window. The sun was setting and it cast a beautiful orange glow over the mountains. I could hear the river flowing nearby. I heard a noise outside and turned around. A large shadow moved quickly across the trees near the cabin. I watched as it approached the edge of the woods. It was Thomas. He didn't look injured at all, despite the fight with Irene. I ran to the door and locked it as he stepped onto the porch. I looked out the window at Thomas. "Why aren't you injured?" I asked through the window. "They can't hurt me anymore," he answered. "Who are they?" I asked. "The town," he whispered. "The town?" "Yeah." "What happened to your team?" "He's dead," he said. "He's gone." "Is that why you never told me about the town?" I asked. "I didn't want to scare you," he admitted. "How'd you know Irene would come after me?" "The town let me know." "The town?" I asked. "What?" "You know what I mean. The town tells you stuff because you're a Watcher?" "Yes." "What the fuck?" "It's not important," he said. "Your journal didn't say the town was intelligent," I said. "It's alive," he responded. "It thinks and it feels. It's a living entity. Its mind is vast and powerful." "It talks to you?" I asked. "Sometimes." "What does it say?" "Everything. Everything," he replied. I was dumbstruck. "That's impossible." "It's true. Now please let me inside," he loudly begged. I noticed something was off with his voice. "Why do you sound different?" I asked. "Because you're making me nervous." "You're freaking me out," I yelled. "Please let me in," he repeated. I looked up at him for a few minutes without saying anything. There was something about his face that made me curious. Something that seemed odd. Finally, I shook my head. "I'm sorry, Thomas," I said. He threw his body at the door. "Let me in!" he shouted. "I can't do that, Thomas," I said calmly. I unlocked the gun locker and grabbed the only shotgun we had. I pointed it at him and waited. Thomas stopped moving and leaned against the door. His breathing became shallow and quick. "Sammy, you're my best friend," he started to say. "I'm sorry, Thomas, but I can't open the door," I snarled. "Stop lying," he yelled. "Open the fucking door." He started throwing himself against it again. Panicking, I pushed the table and couch in front of it. "Samuel!" he screamed. "Open this door!" I just ignored him and went upstairs and laid on the bed. He kept banging on the door for an hour. Eventually, he stopped banging on the door, but I could still hear him yelling. I think I might just call that number he wrote down in his journal. Maybe ARC will send someone to deal with Thomas. I dialed the number. It rang 3 times before a man picked up and said, "Hello? Thomas?" I sat there silently. "Hello?" he asked again. "It got Thomas," I yelled. "Are you safe?" the man asked. "No, I'm not fucking safe," I screamed. "Thomas has become one of those things from Hungry Horse, and now he's here, and he's trying to break into the cabin." "Hold on," he said. "We'll send someone right away. Is anyone else with you?" "Just me," I answered. "Okay, stay put and don't let him get inside the cabin," he said. Then he hung up. I laid back down on the bed and tried to ignore the sounds coming from downstairs. I could hear Thomas pounding against the door again. I was terrified that ARC wouldn't show up soon enough. Then suddenly, I heard a car pull up outside. I jumped off the bed and rushed downstairs and looked out of the window. There were men with rifles standing outside. I saw one of them run to the cabin. The banging at the door stopped. Thomas had noticed them. I heard Thomas roar and the sound of gunshots. I watched as the men loaded Thomas, who was still alive somehow, into the back of a van. The 2 men got into the van and drove off as another car pulled up to the cabin. A man in a white lab coat stepped out and walked up to the door, knocking on it. "Open the door, Sam. Don't make this harder than it has to be." "Who the fuck are you?" "My name is Dr. Jaden Oxblood," he said. "Well, what the hell do you want?" I demanded. "I need to talk to you about Thomas," he said. "I don't have time for your bullshit. Just leave me alone," I yelled at him. I heard him sigh, and that's when I felt an arm grab my shoulder and something prick my neck. I started to curse and the world faded to black. I woke up on the couch about 30 minutes later. Looking around, I saw that Dr. Oxblood was sitting in a chair across from me. "Now that everything has calmed down, you're going to tell me everything you know," he said. "I guess I don't have a choice, guys. I'll update you all after I talk with Dr. Oxblood." So, let me explain what happened while I was gone. Oxblood drove me to the headquarters of ARC. Once there, Dr. Oxblood led me into his office and told me to sit down. He locked the door and sat across from me. The room was filled with bookshelves and pictures of presidents and generals from many wars. On the walls were weapons that I didn't recognise. "So tell me about the town," he said. "What makes you think I know anything about the town?" I asked. "I have reason to believe you are aware of its existence," he said. "Fine. What do you want to know?" I asked. "Tell me everything you know about the town," he said. "Everything?" "All of it." I told him about the day Thomas told me about the town, our trip to Hungry Horse, and how Thomas had stayed behind to fight Irene. He listened intently as I spoke. He was taking notes while I talked and occasionally asked me a question. When I finished telling him everything he wanted to know, he stood up and walked over to a cabinet and opened it. He reached inside and pulled out a small silver box and placed it on his desk. "What's that?" I asked. "It's a key," he answered. "One day you'll need it." "Why would I ever need a key?" I asked. "You'll find out," he said. "If you really want to find out what happened to your friend and figure out what that town is, you'll use the key to unlock the secrets of the town." "Why should I trust you?" I asked. "I can't tell you that," he said. "You'll have to learn to trust me in time." He handed me the key. It was heavier than I expected it to be. I looked at it for a long moment before putting it in my pocket. "What do you plan on doing with me?" I asked. "You are a very valuable asset to us," he said. We want you to become the newest Watcher of Yellowstone." I stared at him for a second, remembering what I'd read in Thomas's journal. What the hell is a Watcher exactly? "It's a title given to humans who have been chosen by the ARC to help protect the world from the supernatural," he said. "Doesn't ARC already have Watchers?" I asked. "Yes, they have many Watchers, but none of them have ever entered one of the towns without changing, like you. You are the first human to enter one of the towns and return without becoming a monster," he answered. I sat there and thought about it. "So if I agree to become a Watcher, what are the risks?" I asked. "There are no guarantees," he said. "The risk of your life, your sanity, and possibly losing your humanity are all high." "So what happens if I decline?" "We will kill you." I laughed. "Why do you think I'll accept?" I asked. He smiled. "Because you want to save your best friend Thomas, and you want answers." "Are you saying you can give me those answers?" I asked. "Not yet," he said, "but once you become a Watcher, I will be able to teach you everything you need to know." "How long until I can become a Watcher?" He smiled. "You've been a Watcher ever since you read the journal." I stared at him for a minute before shaking my head. "You can't be serious," I exclaimed. "I am completely serious," he said. I sighed. "All right, so what exactly do you expect me to do? I don't know any more about the towns than you do." "I know that much," he replied. "So why did you ask me here then?" "To offer you a job." "A job?" "Yes, a job as a Watcher. I want you to become one of us." "What kind of job?" I asked. "In order to become an official Watcher, you must become a member of ARC," he answered. "What does that entail?" "You will have to sign an agreement stating that you will work for us. You will also be required to undergo training and take a test to prove yourself." "And what do I get in return for signing this agreement?" "A bigger paycheck than you've ever seen." I laughed. "Seriously?" "The pay is good," he said, "but the real benefit is the knowledge that you're helping to keep the world safe from monsters, demons, and other threats to humanity. Not everyone gets that chance." "Sounds good to me," I said. "Good," he said. "Congratulations." He unlocked the door with a key and we left the room together. On the way out, a man dressed in a park ranger uniform approached me. "This is your new partner," Dr. Oxblood said. "Welcome to the ARC," he said. "Do you mind if I ask your name?" I asked. "My name is John," he answered. I shook his hand. "Nice to meet you, John." "Likewise," he said. "All right, well, I guess this is goodbye for now, Oxblood. I'm sure I'll see you soon," I said. "You better hope you do," he joked. After leaving the building, John and I got in his car and drove off. "So, where are we going?" I asked. "Back to your cabin," he answered. We arrived at my cabin. The sun was setting and the sky was getting dark. We got out of our car and headed towards the cabin. Once inside, I sat on the couch and looked at John. "So, what's going to happen now?" I asked. "That depends on you," he answered. "What do you mean?" John took out a bottle of whiskey and poured himself a drink. I watched as he drank most of it before answering. "I intend to train you to become a Watcher. Until then, you'll be living with me," he said. "Living with you?" I asked. "For the next couple of months," he answered. "I'll help you get used to being a Watcher, so that when it comes time to choose your own partner, you'll be able to keep them safe. You'll also start to learn things by ARC that even some of our agents don't know." "What kind of things?" "I can't really explain it to you," he answered. "It will only make sense once you're trained." I nodded. "Fine." "Drink up," he said. "We need to get you settled in." I laughed and poured myself some whiskey. "John says training begins in an hour. I'm going to take a nap before he trains me." I was woken up from my nap by the sound of shattering glass and John yelling for me to get my arse downstairs. I ran down the stairs and into the kitchen. "What happened?" I asked. It wasn't John who answered my question. "Hello, Samuel. It seems I've got the upper hand this time," Irene said, holding John by the shoulders. She looked much younger than when I last saw her. She was wearing a black dress, white gloves, and her hair was done up. She was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "What did you do to Thomas?" I asked. "Thomas was a fool, Samuel. He chose to stay behind to protect you. He made his choice, and my town changed him," she said. "I would have killed you both if you hadn't escaped. But now you're mine again, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of it." "What are you talking about? What do you mean, your town?" I asked. Irene smirked, her eyes sparkling with hatred. "My town is a demon. The town is a creature created by the Demon King Azazel. He built our town to serve as his prison. He put all the monsters in it so they could one day be released upon your world." I was speechless. My mind was reeling from the news of the town. "Who are you?" I finally managed to say. "I'm the gatekeeper of the Demon Kingdom. I'm here to destroy the world and end life as we know it," she said. "Let me go!" John shouted. She slammed him against the wall and held him there with ease. "You're not going anywhere until I decide otherwise," she said, smiling. "Release him!" I yelled. She looked at me and laughed. "You don't seem to understand, Samuel. I control this place. Nobody is going to help you." She let go of John and walked towards me. "You don't scare me, and I know you can't hurt me," she said. That's when I remembered the silver key Dr. Oxblood had given me. "Where did you get that?" she snarled. "Wouldn't you like to know?" I quipped back at her. I suddenly felt something strange. It was like my body was being pulled away from my soul. I struggled to hold on to it. "What are you doing?" she screeched. I tried to resist, but it was too late. My soul was gone. "Give me the key!" Irene screamed, running towards me. Suddenly I was back in my body again. I was kneeling on the floor in front of Irene, holding onto my head with one hand and clutching my chest with the other. I could see everything in slow motion. I watched as Irene charged towards me, her face twisted with rage. I stood up and grabbed her by the neck, squeezing tightly. "Let go of me!" she screeched. I squeezed harder. I felt her throat bulge and blood begin to leak out of her mouth. I threw her through the window she had broken in through. I watched as she got up and glared at me before turning around and heading back towards Hungry Horse. I turned around, looking over to John, who was standing in the doorway, a deep gash running down the left side of his face. He smiled at me. "You might not need as much training as I thought you would," he said. "That was pretty impressive." I felt a surge of pride. "I'll be right back," I said. "Be careful, Samuel," he said. "Don't get yourself killed." I smiled. I wouldn't dream of it. What's happening to me, you guys?